Jesus Christ is the firstborn of the dead. To him be glory and power forever and ever. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Some Sadducees, those who deny that there is a resurrection, came forward and put this question to Jesus, saying, "Teacher, Moses wrote for us, if someone's brother dies leaving a wife but no child, his brother must take the wife and raise up descendants for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first married a woman but died childless. Then the second and the third married her, and likewise all the 7 died childless. Finally, the woman also died. Now at the resurrection, whose wife will that woman be? For all 7 had been married to her." Jesus said to them, "The children of this age marry and remarry, but those who are deemed worthy to attain to the coming age and to the resurrection of the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. They can no longer die, for they are like angels, and they are the children of God, because they are the ones who will rise. That the dead will rise, even Moses made known in the passage about the bush, when he called out, 'Lord, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob.' And he is not God of the dead, but of the living, for to him all are alive." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord
Jesus Christ. As you go through school, you have to learn things in a certain order, right? I didn't learn calculus until after multiplication, right? You don't learn that until after addition. You don't learn that until after you have a kind of a number theory, if you will. In the same way, God's revelation comes to the human family piece by piece by piece. But unlike in like a 12-year education, God's revelation to us takes place over 2,500 years, from Abraham down to Christ. Right? God has to reveal certain things along the way before he can get to other things. So the question I have for you is the resurrection of the dead. Right? We say at the end of the creed, "I look forward to the resurrection of the dead and life everlasting." Right? When in salvation history did God reveal to us that we would rise from the dead? If you had Abraham down to Christ. Right around here. So around the year 200 BC. That's when this revelation came to us. It's mostly found in the Old Testament books of Wisdom and Maccabees, which are 2 books actually that are in the Catholic canon but not in the Protestant scriptures. They were written in Greek. But this teaching, this revelation that we will rise from the dead, it's still being argued about in Jesus' day. That's why we have the Sadducees, right, this political party or this Jewish denomination that doesn't believe in the resurrection. You have Pharisees who do, and they like to put each other against one another. The Sadducees, pose this question to Jesus to try to show him how the resurrection of the dead makes no sense. Obviously, Jesus takes it and flips it around and kind of shoves it back in their face. But this belief in the resurrection of the dead was powerful for those early Christians and for those, right, the Jewish people at the end of that revelation history. And so I want to really look more at the first reading, this reading from Maccabees, because the stories there are 2 books of Maccabees. The first one is like a very boring history of what's happening. The second one is all these really exciting stories of people basically being slaughtered and killed. But as you read through it, you're like, what gave all these people this this zeal for the Lord. And it was this belief in the resurrection of the dead. Right? So the Maccabees, the Maccabean story, it takes place in 167 to 160 BC. The Greeks, the Seleucid army, they invade Jerusalem. They attack the temple. They destroy the temple, tear down all the fixtures. They take their pagan idol and they sit it upon the altar in the Holy of Holies. They force the Jewish people to come and to worship their pagan idols, and if they don't worship the idol, then they're killed. If they don't eat unclean food, then they're killed. They take their holy books and they burn them up. It's this really trying time. And a lot of the Jewish people will kind of acquiesce to this new culture. They'll say, well, it's a new culture. We'll just do what they want to do and go with it. But there's this smaller number who are like, no, God gave us a covenant. We're going to keep this covenant. Even to our death, right? And so this group, this army, was led first by Mattathias Maccabeus, right? After he was killed, his son Judas Maccabeus takes leadership, right? And so they fight off the Greeks. They actually, whoop them up and drive them out of Jerusalem. They take the temple, they rededicate the temple, they destroy the pagan idols, they offer worship and sacrifice again, and it's a big celebration. And their menorah, which only had enough oil to light for one day, stayed lit for 8 days miraculously. So this is the story of Hanukkah, right? So every Hanukkah is a celebration of this rededication of the temple. Right? But as I said, when you read through these stories in Maccabees, and you're like, what gives these Jewish people this desire to, fight for God's law and to keep His commandments and be willing to sacrifice for Him? It's this belief in the resurrection of the dead that carries them through. Right? So today we had chapter 7 of the second book of Maccabees, and the whole chapter is the story of a mother with 7 sons, right? And one by one, the King Antiochus, he puts them to death, right? So he cuts off some hands, he cuts out some tongues, he burns them, he puts them to death because they won't eat unclean food, right? He just wants them to have some unclean food to defile themselves in their religion. And they refuse. And so we got the second son. Our reading today was only the second, third, and fourth sons and their martyrdom. But the second son, right when he's about to die with his last breath, he cries out, "You accursed wretch, you dismiss us from this present life, but the King of the universe will raise us up to an everlasting life because we have died for His laws." Right? This belief in the resurrection of the dead was so new but so powerful for them. And that we ourselves were beneficiaries to their willingness to stand up and live and die for this belief, right? So we have to be so grateful that we get to profess every week that we look forward to the resurrection of the dead, right? Probably the saddest part of the whole story is after they've killed 6 of the brothers, the last one, the youngest one, the king goes out of his way to try to convince him to defile himself. He offers him money and wealth and prestige and power. And the son keeps saying, no, no, no. And then he turns to the mom. And the mom has had to watch the 7 sons suffer. And he says, surely you can convince your son to save his life, right? And so the mother to the king says, yeah, let me talk to him. His mother's fantastic. The mother, it says, leans in and in her own native tongue, in defiance of the king, right? She says these words to him. To the son, he says, "My son, have pity on me. I carried you 9 months in my womb and nursed you for 3 years and have reared you and brought you up to this point in your life and have taken care of you. I beg you, my child, look at the heavens and the earth and see everything that is in them. Recognize that God did not make them out of anything that existed, and thus we also came into existence. So do not fear this butcher, but prove worthy of your brothers. Accept death now, so that in the time of God's mercy, I may have you back again with your brothers." Right? You can imagine being a mother having to offer to your son these words of encouragement, right? Stay true to God's law now. And in His time of mercy, when we rise from the dead, we will see each other again. Right? This was so new in Revelation history, and that we get to benefit from that. So we thank the Lord for their martyrdom. And so I just encourage you as we, profess week in, week out that I look forward to the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come, that we take that belief, we allow it to really resonate within us. Because that belief, if it goes deep down into our hearts, into our souls, it should inspire confidence in the face of fear, hope in the face of suffering, right? It should spur us to love, to evangelize, and to share that good news, right, with all we come across.